Welcome to the Herpcore History podcast, presented to you by Little Shop of Horrors. Feel free to reach out to us on any of our social media platforms for any of your feeder needs. All right, let's go ahead and get into this episode. Alrighty, tonight I'm joined by Mr. Mike Lamp, really prolific snake hunter. We've been watching his content for quite a few years, enjoying watching him get out there and find different stuff. How's it going, Mike? How are you doing?
Oh man, how's it going?
It's going. It's a long day of slinging rat crap, and now I get to do this, the fun part.
Same, pretty much the same. It's just I was slinging beer. As far as work goes, I had a long day at work, but I'm all good now.
There you go. I understand that. You want the case or not? If I touch it, it's going back in the truck. If not, we'll get it delivered. I don't know. Well, excellent. So, what was early snake hunting like for you, or what got you into reptiles?
Oh man, that's a fun one because I got like three different little things that dropped me in the rabbit hole. But as far as like reptiles in general, I was as a kid, mom. He's one of my oldest cousins now. He's actually he's part of my dad's generation. He had this python, and back then, it was no problem for you to have a Burmese python. He had a Burmese python. And I was just so obsessed with it. I never got to hold it. I always just got to touch it, and um, so I that like kind of started me into it, and then I would quickly forget about it. And by the time I was, fifth grade, I think I was in fourth or fifth, I can't remember. Craig Trumbauer, he's a he's a when I tell you he's a legendary herper himself. He did this little snake education. I can't remember. I can vaguely remember. It's like he had a couple animals he was showing off years ago, and I remember just being one of those kids, with the bright eyes open, just in awe. And I remember it's time for our little class to leave, and I ended up throwing a little temper tantrum, and it was actually him that told my teacher, hey, let him if there's no problem, let him stick around for a bit. And he's a herper this day, and I never thought like right then that I'd become an adult and run into him again. But you had that, and by the time I was in middle school, I ended up finding a ringneck snake by accident. I was wrestling with my one of my cousins, and I ended up pulling this deflated pool out of the way, like we was in the backyard, and there's this ringneck snake on it. During this time, I didn't know shit about snakes still, and why I picked up this ringneck, I don't know, but it was a cool moment. And I remember just not getting bit. I remember getting mussed, and my finger just smelled like it smelled bad like the whole day. And I was just obsessed with ringnecks. I didn't know shit about anything else but ringnecks and maybe hognose snakes. Um, and I would spend like, oh my gosh, I would spend a ton of times just trying to find a ringneck again. And I remember during Christmas, this is before I would, get on Facebook, as far as snake hunting and herping. So I remember right before Christmas, there's this rotten log in the backyard. It was just a decaying log. And I remember after just reading up on ringnecks on the computer, I just went to digging into this decaying log. I mind you, it's cold, and there's probably zero chance I'm gonna see any snake. And I just remember digging into this log, just kept on digging, and bam, there's like this 3 to 4 inch little ringneck snake, and
Oh wow.
it was so small. And I remember it just plain as day. It was like right before Christmas. And that little thing there, you mean, now, ringnecks a dime a dozen, but it's still like one of my favorites just because that was one of my gateways. Um, and around the same time, I had been dealing with reptiles before I even knew what herping was. Found an
Yeah.
alligator snapping turtle. The very first snapper turtle I found was an alligator snapping turtle.
That's
And
pretty
I
cool.
was,
And my
go ahead.
no, and I apologize. What I didn't ask on the show. Where did you grow up? Where's all this happening at?
Oh man, all of this happened right there in Gaston County, part of the Panhandle. I grew up right here in Gaston County.
Okay.
Um, and I live in Leon now, Tallahassee, but I grew up, born and raised, Gaston County. One of the best to me is one of the best and underrated places, field hurt wise and fishing wise. I just love Gaston County. But right there, right there. A lot of my earlier times in field herping, as a kid, I didn't have my license yet, so I had no other choice but to herp Gaston County, and you know that's where a lot of things started off. From the ringneck to my first corn snake. Yeah, it was, man. But I think the
And
earlier times, that's one of the best times for a field herp, if you ask me. The earlier, like your rookie years and the early times of you field herping. Those first couple years, I think those are the best times because you can't get fatigued with anything. Everything is, you're like a kid in Toys R Us. You're still wanting to learn, and you're not getting bored with certain species. It's like one of the best times,
yes, sir.
and
Yeah.
that's where I spent some of my best times in Gaston County.
Well, and that's so true. Whether there's so many little memories as a child that those are the peak times where there's just the genuine enthusiasm to go out there, and it's not
Nothing but
there's
excitement. You're not worried about,
yes,
you don't know enough to worry about conditions, whether the conditions are right. All you know is you want to go out and look for snakes, turtles, and lizards. It's you're not caring about. This is before you learn all of this stuff. You
yes.
know, and you're going out on the worst conditions and still just looking up. I mean, honestly, I think there's no, like, as far as excitement, there's nothing like your earlier, your first years, first couple years.
Well, yeah, and especially starting off by during, you know, I think you said in December, digging up a tree and finding a snake in there. What does that do to set your parameters for what you think you're going to be looking for? At that point, anything's a possibility. So try it.
Everything.
Yeah, that's very cool. And so you said the first turtle you found was it
Was an
was
alligator
this
snap.
alligator
Well,
snap turtle. What was
the
that? Where
first
were you?
snapping.
What was going on?
It was like the first snapping turtle. I found an alligator snapper before I found a common snap.
That's
And
pretty
what
cool.
happened is I was around these apartments. I would spend the summer with my dad's side of the family. And there's this creek. My dad showed me this creek, and he was just telling me how they would wade it growing up. They would swing off the vine and just drop in. It's a shallow creek. I don't see how. I mean, it had to be real small to do that. But I remember just one day leaving summer camp, I decided to walk that creek, and I remember just seeing this look like a worm. Look like a worm was just floating up and down. It's weird, and I didn't know I was sitting right in front of an alligator snapper. I was just this kid, probably 90, if 90 pounds, soaking wet. And I remember one of my friends was like, "Hey, that something just moved." And I'm looking at this, what I think is a worm, and I'm looking at it as I actually, it takes the mind like a couple of seconds for things to materialize in front of you. And I didn't realize I'm looking at this, probably the biggest turtle I'd ever seen. And it had the ridges. I remember like it was just, it had the ridges on his shell, and he just slowly started moving away. And I had that adrenaline, and I've never seen this turtle a day in my life, and I was, I want to catch this turtle. And I remember him being real heavy. There was a guy. He was fishing with a brim buster, just like maybe a couple 100 feet down. He seen me wrestling this turtle, and he panicked. And the first
Oh,
thing he said is, that thing will take your finger off. And I ignored him, and as me and my best friend ended up pulling this alligator snapping turtle out of the creek. And I remember my dad was just getting off from work. And that man he ran up the hill and told my dad I was wrestling an alligator snapper, which they surprisingly they're kind of known in that neighborhood,
Huh.
and it would become one of the areas, one of the populations I kind of protected, the most. But when he went and told my dad that, I mean, my dad thought that was like cool. I mean, I remember my dad like taking pictures with this. They had the Kodak cameras, the little black and yellow camera, and I just thought that was one of the coolest moments, especially and that happened right there in Gaston County. I was a
Yes,
kid.
sir.
I wasn't even in middle school yet, and I'm just being a kid. I don't know what herping is, don't know what field herping is. I was just being a kid. That's just something I guess is something I was meant to do.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so, were your parents relatively supportive of the hobby? It
Well,
sounds like it.
originally, my dad he only thought that was cool. I mean, he wasn't a snake person. Now my mom, I kind of I was around her mostly, and she ended up supporting me because we had this relative snake. We could both relate. My mom, she used to find hognose snakes, in a spot called Mount Pleasant, Florida. I had never seen a hognose snake in Mount Pleasant, but she would always tell me that was the only snake she would pick up. And I mind you, I would look, and every now and then I see where one had been ran over, but I never found one alive right there. My mom, she would find them when she was a kid, and it kind of gives you an insight of how common things probably were, some decades, before us, before
Yes.
all the changes. And so the one time I did get to see it, I was getting ready to move from the neighborhood, and I was thinking it was like 2 days before I left my neighborhood and moved away. It's a nice yellow hognose snake in front of the fire station, in front of the volunteer fire station, and it looked just like the one that she had found when she was a kid. And I thought that was like, you know, symbolic because my mom's been deceased since 2017, and that hognose looked exactly like the one she had found, you know. So she's always been kind of supportive. We had one class. I was at school and she had ran into a corn snake in the backyard, and I think she had slashed it a bit. Um, and I remember getting home, and I mind you, my mom was kind of, she was kind of stern. But
Uh-huh.
that day, I think I was so angry towards her that like she kind of got it in her head, like, okay, he's like kind of passionate about this stuff. And I remember getting home. The first thing I did, I still had my backpack on. I was running, getting off the school bus. And I asked her, where was the corn snake? And this corn was still there. She didn't kill it, but I could tell she had injured it. And I'm picking up this corn, and it's bleeding. It's a large adult male corn snake. And I remember getting teary eyed, and she saw that. And that corn snake still didn't strike at me not one time. She had injured it and everything. He didn't vibrate his tail or anything. And I think after that, I never had any problems with her, and she's fully supported me. Once she saw how passionate I was, she supported me 100%. You know,
That's very cool.
I took her road cruising with me like 3 times, and she liked it.
That's very cool. That's very cool to get to do that. And for
Oh
them to
yeah.
recognize it, because you hear of the stories of people's parents not being supportive at all, and it's sad, especially here and think about a kid. I was lucky enough that my parents were very supportive of my interests, and so to not have that, uh, that's a bummer. But to have that is very cool, and I love those little stories there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I never, she became 100% supportive. Even now, I still have influence like from my old neighborhood. I just had where one of my old barbers, a white oak gray rat snake crawled in his barber shop, and he removed it with his hands. He removed it and didn't kill it, and it just gives you, it reminds me of the influence I had because almost
Yes,
every single one of those kids down there would still do it. It was because of me. They weren't kids. Now they're still terrified of the copperheads. I was lucky enough to live in that one part of Florida where you had copperheads. They're still terrified of copperheads and cottonmouths, but even in eastern diamondback rattlesnake, they would always call me to remove them instead of shooting them. I
Yeah.
got to that point, and like that was something to me within it. That meant a lot to me within itself.
Oh no, it does. And right, you think about the little echoes and the waves that your actions put out. And when you do get the opportunity to interact with that person and educate them on it, how much of a change does that make? And that's something that comes out of time and respect and passion, right? When people can see that there is some sort of them sensing that and kind of accepting it more. And so to hear it spread, that that's one of the most important things we can do as people, as hobbyists in this, where just take the time and educate those people, whether it's online or in real life. Your words matter.
Oh yeah, 100%. And you don't think they do right then, but I tell you, it mean a lot for. I had two cousins. One of them, he's a pro. He's in football now. He plays for the NFL. Um, kids would flock to him all the time. And at a certain point, especially right after I got on, on Instagram, um, I could be getting home from work, and these kids would, these kids be getting off the school bus. Everyone wants to follow me into the forest or down the railroad tracks, just looking to see get a glimpse of a corn or white oak on a lucky day a diamondback crossing, and I would have like 8, 9, sometimes 10 kids trying to follow me down the railroad tracks. So that meant something to me, and that it felt good.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
mind you now, these kids are all adults. They're adults on their own now, and I look back on it and. When you're passionate about something, you have influence because you leading other people, you leading them, guiding them, you're educating them, and before
Yeah.
you know it, you got people, that you're leading, without you knowing it. So,
Yes. And you think of the multiplier that that action creates, right? You taking the time to do that, to let those kids hang out with you and see that, right? Then, to your point, they're young adults now, and then they're going to be starting families, and they pass that on to their kid, and then their kid becomes passionate about it. Who knows how it amplifies and just keeps multiplying over time. And, that it gets to your point about thinking of population decline over time, where these animals, it's a little nature's gummy bear, right? It's a little squishy animal with no, it's big. Some species, their biggest, or all of their biggest defense is their most vulnerable part of their body.
yep,
To your point about you can't find it, but you see it roadkilled. There's so
yep,
many things stacked against it, and for the most part, everybody hates them. And so then you see that animal still survive. And then as we get older, we understand the time it takes for that animal to hit sexual maturity and reproduce. And what are the chances of that happening? And so any little thing that we can do to educate people, it does amplify that. And it's sad to see. Were there any other kind of populations over time that you'd heard of that now going back you can't find, or you see
oh, I
declines
got a
from
couple
your
of them,
personal
man.
experience?
I got a couple of them, and I was blessed to be raised up in a rural area, and so then that area which I plan to return and buy some property, my home area. That is still rural. It's not developed, and hopefully it's never, it's not developed no time soon. If I can influence that and circumvent that, I will. But just across the line, I live maybe 5 minutes from the South Georgia line, or from the Georgia line, Florida Georgia line, and I would take a bicycle, man. Spring break, I just couldn't wait for spring break. There's this population of corn snakes, and I joke about it all the time. I always tell them there's this one part of South Georgia where you find a corn snake there, it'll blow an OKT corn out of the water. It'll blow like some of those South Carolina corns out of the water. It's just one spot and right across the line. And so that's actually how my second corn snake was found. Um, okay, there's this population, and what happened is I think someone moved in from up north and they cut all this. They did a lot of slashing and they reshaped the land. They did all kind of. I mean, they changed like maybe out of I want to say close to. two, 300 acres of land just gone, just changed. Trees are gone. The two lakes
Oh
that
wow.
were there, I mean, they're gone. It's bad. But
Huh.
I would take a bicycle, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, just right before the sun come up. And I could, around that time, I would get like maybe by 10 o'clock, I'll have gotten like maybe four, on the best day, 5 or 6 corn snakes in the road. And all of them will look nice. And it was just like one of those earlier times, one of my favorite times, spring break for like 3 years straight. First day of spring break, I'm shooting to South Georgia on the bicycle early in the morning. I'm a teenager. And it never failed. Never failed. You have that one week, that first week, where every single corn you find is going to be in the shed. And then, like, when that second week roll around, they all looking super nice. And man, it's like now you go right up in there. You lucky. You lucky if you see like a nice, cause you can still get them, but they're so hard. And that population, I know it took a hit, like that little one area, because I would go maybe a couple of miles away from there, and the corns look totally different.
Mm.
But I don't know if it was just one male breeding with everything right there, but every single one of them looks sharp. And now it's like you're playing a video game on the hardest difficulty just to find one there. And I'm 30 years old now. This is from a time when I was like 14, 15.
Wow.
And this, like I said, they took a hit. Even the white oak snakes over there, they they took kind of a hit. When I tell you, because there's nothing there. I mean, it's I think he was planning to have a farm there, but it's nothing. He ended up he's not there. We had Hurricane Michael come through, and it destroyed his house. And he had them change the land. It was nothing over there.
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
had that happen, and then I had a nice population of scarlet king snakes. This was just a couple years ago. Every every March and April, I had some tin, and it just never failed. I had some tin on one side, and I had some shingles on the other side, and you guaranteed to see a couple of scarlet king snakes. And this small company, they do asphalt. They went and that population is gone. You're not finding a single scarlet king snake there. Now you might find a scarlet snake, or you might find a black racer, but you're not gonna find a scarlet king snake there anymore. And that was like the only part of Gaston County where I saw scarlet kings
Yeah.
instead of going to elsewhere.
Yes, sir.
But
Yeah.
I've seen it. I mean, I've seen like development. I've seen populations get lost. I've had my share of it. It ain't nice. I mean, whether you live in North Florida or South Florida, it's not. It affects you like when you go in to see one of your favorite animals, and you can look back at a time where it was like no sweat, and now that it's just gone. It
Yeah.
don't affect everyone else, but it affects you because you're in the reptiles, and so a lot of people, it gives you it helps you notice there's a lot of people that don't know what's going on. So that's like us. Um, I'm not how can I say it? Like if I'm not big on something, I'm not passionate about something, there's a chance that I won't know anything about it. And that's how 80% of the world is when it comes to reptiles, you
Yes.
know. So they could care less. And if it wasn't for us, the biologists, people that do field work, you know, that's honest, we're a lot of those animals have.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
No, and that's one of those things where that I think so early on, especially when you're communicating with people about reptiles, you're like, man, these people are stupid. But then you realize over time that well, they don't know what I know, what we know, and so it's no different. That person might be able to turn around and talk to me about something else completely, and and I'm there, and now I'm the dummy going, oh, well, okay, no, I didn't know that, whatever it is. And so I think that, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And again, it keeps you humble in the situation, that allows you to educate those people. And I think that's a good way to frame it, just understanding that.
oh yeah, because there's like that same big deal. I kind of have, because I have these talks with a bunch of my friends every now and then, because we're broken, and I mentioned this like last week. We're broken in our little subgroups. We got field herpers. We have like just pure biologists. We have people that just grew up field herping, and they may have kept a few animals from the wild. And we got some people that just look at that as like being the worst thing on earth. And honestly, if we all, understood each other, I think it would be a lot different. But, habitat destruction, if you ask me, that's that's gonna there's no bigger way for me to explain it. But habitat destruction is gonna be our number one enemy when it comes to these reptiles and as far as field herping in general.
Yeah.
Habitat destruction and because we argue about people collecting animals every and honestly, if you ask me, there's nothing I can't stand a commercial collector, someone that just collects and just to sell for for profit. That's one of the
100%.
things I can't stand at all. But then I'm a culprit of keeping like one or two corn snakes a year growing up and taking care of those animals and then not a single animal being sold for profit.
Yes.
So you got like you got a bunch of us that that get in the field herping from different avenues, whether it be from through biology, through being a kid that this not those kid that just love picking up stuff, or you have a bunch of ways that people get into it, and so their views end up being different.
Yes,
And
for sure.
so
And that's
I'm sure
especially
you
when
ran into that.
for sure, for sure. And that's especially something, when you're thinking about the idea of population decline in areas and the expansion of people's space, right? Neighborhoods, houses, shopping centers, roads. Unfortunately, that's going to keep happening regardless. We can fight against it as much as we want and we can protect areas, but that segmentation of those areas is going to lead to populations being lost. And they might be
Yep.
focused in one area, but nonetheless, it's going to happen, right? The places you think that it won't happen, it does happen. From my first time going out to West Texas to what it is now, it's crazy. There's a little bubble house every few miles. Certain roads look like, a crazy neighborhood of just stuck together buildings, and it's only going to keep growing, and people are going to find value in those areas over time. And what's that going to do to those landscapes? And unfortunately, reptiles are never going to push the needle one way or towards our way, and it's going to go towards taking those resources or expanding into different areas. And so the idea of an individual collecting a stock of animals to breed to reproduce over time, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And we can all agree that commercial collecting is disgusting and, don't do that.
Very.
But that is there, unfortunately people suck, right? So in any subgroup of anything, there's going to be good people and there's going to be bad people. But the people that are good in this hobby outweigh the people that are whatever the bad stereotype is.
I
And
100%
so,
agree. I agree with that 100%.
yes, yeah, I see nothing wrong with collecting founding stocks of animals from whatever for whatever reason, to and even though I think there's a lot of gene flow when you think about locality and like a real way that matters genetically, it's probably not that important. But if that's what you and I do, I breed locality, everything I do. But it's I think it's important to track lines, and over time, when you think about real science and could these collections be valuable in the future, as much data as we have on where that animal was collected, when it was collected, the pairings, that might add value to your collection over time. And I don't mean monetary value. I mean just overall benefit
to the hobby and science, which I
Right.
think is if your collection can become significant in someone's project, how cool is that?
Oh
That
God.
is that you know there's nothing higher in my books than that.
Same. And that's gosh, as I say the same thing. I mean, and that's one thing I want to do more than anything, you know. I'd rather contribute. And I was just talking to one of my friends. I told him that was like what was that last week? I told him I said, man, I never joined a podcast before anything. I said I would love to, but I never done that. I've never got to like speak on all. I'll tell my one of my many stories. Or just talk reptiles like that, and I actually ended up liking it. Um, but it's just one thing to contribute, something, and then you share your passion with a bunch of others. I mean, I'll never forget. We had this thing. That's before I got on Facebook. We had this thing called Field Herp Forum, and I was just a
Yeah.
teenager, and those were some those were some funny times and some. I look back on it now, man, and I think, and I was like, man, I'm lucky, because as tight knit of a group we are. Um, when I tell you, sometimes we can be very unwelcoming or come off as very unwelcoming, but for the most part, 90% of the people I've come to meet through reptiles and field herping, man, I wouldn't trade them for anything.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And so early on, it sounds like you were herping with your school friends and stuff like that. Uh, at what at any point did you ever have any like reptile friends, and that's what you guys were going out to do?
Oh yeah, I had matter of fact, I had two of them. One is not alive now, but the other, he he's not he doesn't herp as much, but he's in the hobby. He keeps a lot of reptiles. But
Very cool.
I had these two friends I can always count on in middle school and in early high school. Middle school is the best time if you ask me with them because high school you're changing it, you're slowly becoming an adult and your mind is just going on all kind of other stuff. and and you're still trying to hold on to reptiles. And I'll be honest with you, two of us because I played basketball and ran track. But I'm gonna tell you, with both of those guys, one of them was present when I found my first corn snake. I'll never forget it. I was supposed to go to basketball practice the next day, but that one, like when I found my first corn snake, it was the day that I was sick. I didn't go to school that day. I was supposedly sick. I had been looking, and during this time, I had been looking on the internet, reading up on all kind of colubrids, and within like couple of weeks, I knew just about every single colubrid on the eastern seaboard, and I learned all the pit vipers. And by then, I've read this stuff on the internet. Now I think I'm just some sort of expert. Hadn't found a single damn corn snake yet, and I just remember that day I was supposed to be sick, but I ended up walking around outside, and I had this railroad track that cuts through my neighborhood, and then there's like a pine forest. And I remember just walking down the railroad track. One of both of my friends were at school, but one of them, I was talking to him, and I was walking down the railroad tracks. I was texting him. I'll never forget it. We had this. That's when the phones weren't they were still smartphones, but they weren't like they are now. And I had this it was called the BlackBerry, I think. It was like a little mini keyboard on the phone. And I remember seeing this reddish snake. I knew exactly what it was when it was slowly crossing the railroad tracks. And I remember it felt like lightning just struck my chest. I just felt the adrenaline. I remember just running, hearing the rock song from the railroad tracks as I'm running down. And this nice, immaculate corn snake goes to vibrating its tail, getting into the strike pose. And I guess I was so happy, I forgot that had never been bit by a snake before either. And I pick up this corn. I mean, I'm getting jetted with musk, and I'm just happy. It's like one of the best days of my life. And I'm texting him. I'm like rushing to text him, and hey man, I finally got a corn snake. He hadn't found one either, but he found a gray rat snake before I did. So that was my answer to him.
There you
And by that
go.
time, he was getting off the school bus. And as I was coming right down, right up the railroad tracks, right in front of, the houses, and I just remember him running. 'Cause he tripped and fell when he was running to get get up close to see that corn.
How cool is that?
And yeah, his name is Devontae Edwards. Man, him we still tight to this day. And man, this corn is still vibrating and striking. And I remember us doing rock paper scissors. And he was like, man, whoever wins, they get to take the corn section. I was like, man, this is my corn. I was like, this is my first one. And I remember winning the rock paper scissors. I had that corn snake from what was that? I want to say from was it eighth grade up until I graduated.
Very cool.
Um, and I mean, it was nice. It was just nice male. And I would spend a bunch of times, trying to repeat that, going up and down the railroad tracks. And me and him, he wanted a corn snake so bad he had never saw one. He would find white oaks, he'd find everything else. And then I remember this one morning, in spring break, I had told him, I said, "Hey man, let's get on our bikes and we can go to we can cross the line into Georgia." I said, "I'm sure we'll see one." And I remember he by that time I'd seen a few of them. He still hadn't seen one. He had never saw one alive. And I remember early in the morning, us getting on our bikes and crossing the line into Georgia. We saw me and him together. We saw four corn snakes, and it was actually him. It was actually him that he told me about this guy named Fulton. It was Brandon Fulton. Brandon happened to be friends with Noah Fields, but Brandon would
Okay.
actually create videos on YouTube. And he was telling me about scarlet king snakes. I'm like, you're not gonna see a scarlet king snake here. I've never found one. I never found one here. Oh well, this guy Brandon Fulton, he peeled them behind bar. And so Devontae called himself looking for Scarlet King snake because that's how he peeled the fourth corn snake. He peeled the three we saw were in the road. They're all adults. He peeled the baby one looking for Scarlet King snakes. And during that time, I didn't know you could do that. I was blown out of the water. I'm like, what? Hey, it's a corn snake sticking out. I remember hearing there's a corn snake sticking out of this tree. And I asked, hey, how the hell you do that? He was like, well, I was looking for Scarlet King snakes. That's how you find Scarlet King snakes. And I'm looking at this baby corn snake, and I'm looking at him like he's crazy. And yeah, we found four of them that day. And by that time, I'd seen a few of them. But I remember him keeping that young one. And I remember us taking pictures, we letting the rest of them go. But it was me. It's usually, it was me and him. It was always us two.
Very cool. Well, that's so interesting when you those little moments where you learn something or figure something out, where you're like, "Oh, this is how this works. I can do it this way." Those are so cool.
Yeah, he changed the game for me when he did that. Because when he did that, almost every spring after that, I would spend like a morning doing that. And eventually, I got a few corns like that. I peeled a scarlet snake like that. I got a ringneck guard. I mean, you'd be surprised, all kind of stuff, things that you wouldn't think would live in there. I mean, I peeled the freaking cottonmouth inside of a pine tree, and
Yeah.
not talking about base level. I'm talking about like mid up.
Huh.
So
I mean,
yeah,
it makes sense, for them to use those same environments. It obviously works. And the idea, even in captivity, right? They like to have that kind of pressure on them to feel secure. And so, that makes sense that many animals would use that. But that's pretty crazy to hear one high up.
yeah.
I wonder.
And I mind we were kids. I mean, we were just kids doing this stuff, and the more you spend time out there, he probably don't feel hurt nowhere near as much as I. I'm probably the only one that still does it, and he, it's one of those things where you can just look back and you be like, well, damn. I mean, I'm the only one that still, that still do it. I got him to do it one more time when we were adults. And actually, it was him. He called himself mocking me one day. I was getting off from work, and he comes up, "Hey, I see you don't find corn snakes no more. You don't care about corn snakes. All you care about is king snakes. It's like I never saw one of them. And I mind you, it's June, it's hot. And I said, well, you ain't got to worry about me seeing one of those, because during that time I would only flip them and cruise them. This was back in 2000 and what was that, 2021, I think. And so it's June, late. I think it's late June or mid June. Um, he asked me, he's like, "Well, you want to road cruise for some snakes?" And I mind you, he has never road cruised. And we had never heard together as adults. We would always do it as a teenager. He was just mocking me for shits and giggles. So I told him, "Well, yeah, we can road cruise." And we ended up going to South Alabama. I mind you, I lived. I lived like 20 minutes from South Alabama, 5 minutes from from Georgia. So we ended up going into South Georgia out to Alabama. The sun was getting ready to go down. It's still hot as balls. We didn't see not a single snake. And I told him, I was like, well, this is what road cruising gets you. It gets you no snakes this time of year. And that was just me still learning that. I was still learning. So we getting ready to turn around and head back into Florida. And all of a sudden I see the silhouette of a big old snake crossing the road, coming into the road. And I'm thinking right then, because it's one of those little magic areas where you don't see any canebrake rattlesnakes where I live. But the minute you cross the Georgia line, you start seeing canebrakes. The snake was so big, I thought it was a canebrake rattlesnake. And so I just remember him, speed up, Mike, that's a snake. And as I get closer up on the snake, I mind just getting dark. My headlights hit it, and I just see these white bars on the snake, and I'm cursing, man, that's a fucking king snake. and and he hopped out. He hopped out before I stopped the car. And
Yeah.
sure enough, it was a big old king snake, a big male. And he was like, "Oh man, this how I feel when you find these." It's like, man, these are better than corn snakes. And me being me, they're better than every damn thing. I'm holding this snake, and he's throwing up turtle eggs. I mean, he must have ate a bunch of turtle. I thought it was a gravid female. It was a male. He ate a bunch of turtle eggs.
Wow.
Um, and I'm talking about a 6 foot big old king.
Monster.
But that was the first and only time we herped together as adults, and he still bring that up every time we see each other.
Well, you got to try to drag him back out there. Get him into it again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's badass. I love that. So those so one of the stories you brought up early on was Mr. Craig Trumbauer and running into him and that be one of your first experiences, and then kind of running back into him again. What was that? Did you recognize him immediately, or did it?
What happened was in the year 2018, because I wouldn't see him again, and in which Craig is one of those people you see him, you're not gonna never forget his face. He's just distinct. You're gonna remember.
Yes, sir.
What happened is like 2018. It was one of my best years field herping. I ended up going to the Daytona show for the first time, and he's there, and I remember just looking at him, and I couldn't put my finger on him. I couldn't put my finger on it right then until someone called him Trumbow, and that name stuck, and that's what they called him when I was a kid. I remember the teacher saying Mr. Trumbow. And I remember looking at his face, now he's aged a bit, you know, and it was sure enough, it was him. And just him not remembering who I was during that time, it tells you that he's ran into a lot of people,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
a lot of them. And, he's one of the best. When I tell you he's a legend within himself, but, something like that situation indirectly, it had an effect on me right then, he's probably had that effect on a lot of other people. I remember them. By that time, more than a decade had passed.
Yeah.
More
Well,
than
that
two
gets back
decades.
to the. Yes, sir. Yeah. And that gets back to the importance of taking the time with anybody that will shows any type of interest in it. And I've experienced it in the work environment where, just over time you beat these people down enough where they're like, all right, so what about these things? There's I've met quite a few guys. There's this one guy in particular that uh, we'd be stuck in an aseptic processing room together, like where you couldn't like put your hands below table length, and we were in these like bubble suits, and it was just ridiculous. And we'd be in there for like 18 hours, and man,
Uh,
this guy would just let me babble on about snake hunting, and that guy still hits me up and is into snakes, but doesn't keep anything, doesn't go herping, but asks me genuine questions like, I was googling something and I was looking at anoles and tell me about those. And, oh yeah, man, and it's important. You can just beat those people down, and again, what effect does that make over time?
oh, it makes a big one because even then you kind of pick their minds, and then they want to pick yours after a while. It's kind of a. I want to see why he's so attached to why he's so in it, and it's one of those things. I want to see why he's so intrigued. You kind
Yes.
of get them curious. Um, it got to be something for him to spend so much time doing this. Because think about it, most of us, when our alarm goes off, waking us up for work, we're liable to snooze it probably 2 or 3 times. It only take one. My alarm don't have to wake me up. If I have a rocket run to get on, or if I have a hurt trip, I'm up before my alarm. I
Yes.
wake the damn phone up. I'm by the time my alarm is going off, I'm already in the gas station getting gas and snacks. So it's one of those things. So they want to know why are you like what gets you into that? Why are you that interested? After a while,
Yes.
after they hear you talk and see how passionate you are, they I think what goes on in their minds is I want to see why he's this way, why he's that passionate. It got to be good. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
And
that's what it is.
it's great. It's a great feeling when you find that target species. What were some of your trips outside of were some of your first trips or any just the beginning? What was the first time you went on a trip somewhere else? I mean, besides
Oh,
taking a bike across state lines, which is
oh
that's
gosh,
hardcore.
man, when I got my first car, that's all I did. Well, really, when I got my second car, but I wanted road crews so bad because most of my friends, especially in the reptile community, most of my friends were older than I was. I had people like Garrett Kraft. They're much older. And they joke about me being the youngest one still, and I'm 30.
Yeah.
But these guys were already driving around road crews, and even then, I had never gotten in the car and sat with them the road crew. So when I got my first car, I wanted to go. My problem was I wanted to go everywhere, so I didn't spend enough time focusing on one area. And so, but my first 2 years, naturally with me being in the panhandle, the first thing I wanted to get into was going eye, and I still never got out of going eye or means eye. And so I had that. That was a big thing for me. Still, that's pretty much my answer to what alternative is to a lot of those guys out west. And so, still during that time, I didn't know much as far as conditions. I just wanted to feel urban road crews. So any day I got off, I would get in my car, get gas, get snacks, and I hit the forest. But I was always hitting the Taquin. We had this spot called Taquin State Forest. It's a hit or miss spot. It's an area that'll piss you off. I mean, it used to be known for hognose snakes, both southern and eastern. And now you lucky if you see a hognose snake. All you're gonna pretty much see over there is a coach whip, maybe a diamondback, maybe, just maybe a pine snake. But so I was always hitting there until I started looking and getting on the internet, getting on Facebook and chatting with guys. And all of a sudden, these guys, oh man, you live in Apalachicola King Range. And during that time, I mind you, I had never seen an Eastern King or an Apalachicola King in Florida. And so Here again, I start chatting with these guys, of course, the older guys. I always kind of cling to the older guys because they've been doing this crap before I was born. You had a lot of these guys doing this in the 70s when they made it look super easy.
Yeah.
So, first thing I did was start looking for, chain kings and then Apalachicolas. And one morning, I guess one morning, after I did so much research reading about them, I said, I'm going to go try this spot out. And this is like the first day of me getting there. The first day. Um, I get down there, I'm down on the coast. We call it Nature Coast. On the way there, I cruise a big old scarlet snake. It was like kind of late for it to be moving. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning. Five. And I think it was gravid. I thought it was a scarlet king snake, and that was the only reason I stopped. But later on that morning, it was still dew on the ground. I'm getting bit by mosquitoes, and as I'm walking, I mind you, the sea is not even 100 yards away from me. And I remember just walking past this little pattern on the ground, and I just happened to step back and look at it, and it's a large king snake just laying right there. I remember the adrenaline I got. I was so happy and excited. I had to pee real bad. I remember just looking at this snake just laying in situ. I'm like, don't you go nowhere. I got to go take a leak. Come back, come back. The snake is still right there. And I remember taking pictures of it. And I remember seeing another king snake that morning. And oh gosh. So that was like one of the big things I remember. Of course, posting the picture of, me with this king snake for the first time on Facebook. And out of nowhere, I'm bombarded with messages. Oh gosh, like left and right, friend requests left and right. And by that time, I wasn't, that big on Facebook. So I ended up talking with a lot of these herbers. And the first thing I would see in my messages, hey, where did you find this king snake? Where did you find this? And like, what time of day was it? And to me, these are all stupid and crazy and weird questions because I'm not used to it. I'm not used to those kind of questions.
Yeah.
So I remember trying to answer like all those questions, and it took my friend Garrett to tell me, "Hey, don't do that. Just like take care of that population. I wouldn't do that." And I remember asking him why, and it was him that taught me, why we don't give populations away and why we protect populations. It was him because
Yes.
he kind of chewed me out for it. And so fast forward, and it's like a month later, I'm like hooked, man. That was like drugs to me. Every chance I got, I wanted to go find a king snake. And I happened to meet one of my friends, Josh Young. He was pretty sharp herper too over in this area. And he lived on the Wakulla River during that time. So I'm visiting him at his house. And I just see this nice orange and yellow snake crawl out of his its hide while I'm at his house. And I remember looking at the snake. And I'm looking at him crazy, like, what the hell is that? And he's like, man, that's an Apalachicola king. And I'm like, a what? And during that time, he's like, yeah, I found it down the road. It was in the road. I was like, you found one around here? He was like, yeah. And I remember looking up Apalachicola kings. And even then, I was hooked. I was immediately hooked. I was asking him a million questions. I probably aggravated the hell out of Josh Young. Um, in May, in May of that same year comes around, I meet with my friends Brandon Ballard. I met all of them for the first time. We camped in the Apalachicola National Forest. I mean, probably one of the best field herping experience I had in my life. Uh, so I meet him. I don't know if you ever met Brandon Ballard, but when I tell you he's wholesome, I love him. I walked up to him and he's holding this pregnant marsh snake. And that salt marsh snake is chewing on him. He's bleeding. He's a big old bronzy guy. And it was like man, it was all four of them. I enjoyed all five of them that morning. So I ended up camping with them. Brandon, Eddie Brown, Lawson Hopper. Uh, it was J.U. Banks. And when they welcomed me in open arms, I was still, young and still just learning. And so what happened was Lawson found a nice Halloween hognose snake. Because Halloween is orange and black. It was Eastern
Okay.
hognose. And I got jealous. I was still fireheaded during that time. I was like 22 years old. I got jealous. I was like, ain't no way. I've been looking for a hognose snake over here. I said, we camped right here, and he found one. And so I got lost. I ended up trying to find a hognose, and I got lost in the forest. And I mind you, it's nothing but palmetto flatwoods. And you got the swamps, you got these floodplains, and after a certain point, everywhere looks the same. It's like in the desert. Every direction looks the same. You easily get lost. So I ended up getting lost in the forest, and the sun. The sun is the sun went from being at its highest point in the sky to like its lowest. It's getting dark. My voice is getting sore because I've been calling out these guys and they can't hear me. I fell into a canal. I had two cell phones. Both of my phones had died at that point. I was panicking. I could barely see. Visibility was getting low, and I'm just panicking. So I'm getting to a point where, like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna have to find somewhere to sit still until the sun come back up. And they'll probably joke about this for the rest of their lives, but I got hungry. I got so hungry. I remember this crawdad coming up out of the ground. I ate a raw crawdad. That's how hungry I was. I had a lighter in my pocket. And I ate.
Uh.
And so I was distracted. I was distracted. I ate this crawdad, and I remember walking. And I forgot how dark it was. I slipped and fell in this canal, and I could just remember seeing this adult cottonmouth crawl out the other end of that canal. That's when shit got real. I panicked because I didn't want to step on a cottonmouth, in pitch black darkness.
Yeah.
And so I knew eventually it was gonna get so dark and I couldn't see. So I remember just picking one direction and just running. And I mind you, they marked the trees for the red for the cockaded woodpeckers. They marked the
Okay.
trees that are occupied by them in the forest. I followed those white rings. So, every tree that had one, I followed them, I guess, in a straight line, good enough until I got out and onto one of the forest roads, the main forest road. I still had Lawson's snake hook in my hand. And I remember this guy just stopping. He was going, I guess he was frogging near our campground. And the guy just pulls over and tells me, man, you look panicked. You need help? You okay? And I told him I had been lost. I just got lost in the swamp. I'm just trying to get back to Whitehead Lake, which is the camp we were using. So by the time I get back to the camp, uh, they've had a rally of, I think, 3 or 4 sheriff's officers with them. And I can only imagine, because we joke about it now, I can only imagine how it looks for the only black guy to come up missing in the forest. And I know the cops probably gave them the meanest and craziest looks. And I remember Brandon giving me a big old hug. I think the teacher and parent came out of him. He gave me a big old hug. And he was like, "Oh man, I'm just glad you're okay." So the sheriff looks at me and he gives us all a weird look, and the rest of them just leave. And so by this
Yeah.
time, I'm embarrassed. Man, my pride is broken. I'm embarrassed. And so Brandon comes up with a pillowcase. He's like, "Well, Mike, we found a little something while we're in search of you." And he's like, "You want to do the honors?" And he handed me this pillowcase. I opened up this pillowcase and man, it's a nice lowland king snake inside of that pillowcase. And I remember just looking at it kind of like the snake Josh Young had. And so by this time, we're all gathered up. Everyone's happy. I'm fine. They were thinking the worst, because you got a lot of alligators over there.
Yeah.
And so later on that night, my friend Matt Bordeaux and his wife comes through. They cruise a baby Apalachicola king snake in the road. And so during this time, I'm like kind of embarrassed. I'm jealous. I got all these emotions just floating around because I'm still, still learning.
Yeah.
And so the next day, we are getting ready to split off. And we did. They brought me to my car. I had a white Mustang, convertible Mustang during that time. I was an irresponsible kid, don't have no real bills. I was living with my mom still at that time. So I was pretty much out of money. But what saved me is my income tax. My income tax. It finally came through. These guys cruised a male Apalachicola King after we split. Now this time I'm just pissed. I feel defeated. I'm like I found nothing the whole time, and something just told me, hey, just give it a try. Just to give it one more try. And I ended up going back into the road that we used to camp. And as I'm doing that, I mind you, this during the time that pygmies were like a dime a dozen. I've dodged like 3 or 4 pygmies in the road. Just kind of like just wanting to see a king snake that bad. I'll never forget this big male alligator crossing the road. I went around him. I didn't even stop for the alligator. So at this point, I'm frustrated. I'm furious. I'm kind of embarrassed. I'm like, why? Like, I'm the only guy that didn't find anything. And when I say anything, I didn't find anything. I mind you, I found like what, maybe a few scarlet snakes and one scarlet king snake. But to me, I didn't find anything because I was just that young and, fireheaded. So as I'm getting ready to give up, I stopped my car right at an intersection on the forest roads. And I look in the rearview mirror. I'm getting ready to back my car up and just turn around and go home. As I'm doing that, I see this nice yellow and brown snake slowly crossing the road. And I think I'm just hallucinating. I'm like, that can't be real. Like, yeah, and I actually see the snake crawl into the road, and I remember just leaving my car in neutral. And I'm running out, and there's this big lowland king in the road, and oh man, like I was relieved. I'm like yelling. There's no one else in the forest but me. I'm like yelling at the top of my lungs, and I was hooked. I mean, that was like one of the best days of my life. Um, it's one of those things that I'll always remember. We always joke about it now because you have like trips like that and moments like that that kind of like affects and affect who you become and what kind of herper you become. Like whether you that guy that just gives up after being behind the steering wheel for so long, or you that guy that's gonna camp in the forest like 4 days straight and go home, beat the game and go
Yes.
home. And so,
Yeah.
that was one of the things that kind of fire started everything for me. That I think that was the trip.
Yes.
And me and those guys talk every single day now.
Yeah. How cool is that? And especially for, so the fact that you got lost and they cared about you and they were concerned and they put the effort in, that whole situation, just letting you in the group in general, just the whole experience, and then for it to pay off and be such a valuable life lesson, right? Because that's so multifaceted, where that's not just a valuable lesson for field herping and the hobby, but just for life in general. And so to experience that, what a kind of pivoting, and then to get lost and the humbling factor of that, all of that, it's a movie esque.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. I literally got lost. I got lost in the Apalachicola National Forest.
Yeah, no,
You
that's
know,
terrifying.
after
So yeah,
sundown.
yeah, yeah. No, see, I herp next to the road. If I get lost, I really messed up. It's like, so getting lost in the woods, yeah, no, that would be terrible.
Oh man, when I tell you that was like the best sleep I got, because I came home. I don't know how long those. I'm glad I don't have Lyme disease. 'Cause I came home, it was like I had a couple ticks on me, and I had to shower and scrub. It was like a man. When I tell you, it was an experience. It was an experience. I mean,
Yeah, you got beat up.
I slept good on that last. That was my last day off, and I slept so good. Wake up the next day, and there's like once again a billion questions and a billion notifications. I mean, it was that was one of my first trips with anybody. Like that was one of my very first trip with multiple people, multiple herpers, and those guys welcomed me with open arms.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
you
and to
don't
find
see
those
that a lot.
like-minded people and to be able to experience that and then make lifelong friends, that's the beautiful part of field herping and the hobby in general is you do get to make those connections with people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, where are you at now? What are your goals moving forward? What's the next big target?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know why I haven't targeted this. Well, I know why I haven't targeted this snake. I'm always on Apalachicola Kings, but my goal for this year is um a Caligaster from the Apalachicola National Forest. I've never seen a mole king snake personally from right there, and I know they're there, but I want to do that. And actually, in the next year, I mean next spring, I kind of want to visit Kansas again because I didn't get to experience Kansas like I wanted to. And so those are the two big things for me.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, very cool, very cool. What over time, I mean besides that being an amazing story, and are there any other things that stand out to you that you go, you know what? In any way, whether whatever it is.
Oh well, I have this one. This one, my friend, we're friends. His name is Reese Hammock. He's from Texas. He's from East Texas. Um, we all go through our things in life, and we were, you have those friends you've never seen in person, but you can kind of relate to them on Facebook, or you can kind of like speak to them. And we would talk snakes every now and then. But I had met Reese for the first time in 2022, and Reese just always. What happens? I had never cruised, never road cruised or herped any in New Orleans or around Louisiana. So I was talking to Reese, and I told him, "Hey man, I don't want to drive all the way to Texas, and I'm sure you don't want to drive all the way to, to Florida, but I can meet you halfway in Louisiana. I mean, Louisiana is probably a decent place to hurt." And we did. Um, I left work. I packed my clothes, and I'd already had a hotel room there. And I met Reese for the first time. Gosh, and I tell you, you got different personalities. Every herper is different.
Yep.
I mean, maybe 3 hours after meeting Reese, I'm thinking I'm gonna get some rest so we can cruise in the morning. Reese wakes me up at I think 3 in the morning. Oh man, I'm excited, bro. Let's go road cruise. Let's go road cruise. And I'm like, man, Reese, I was like, I haven't been asleep for a good 3 hours. And it was one of those like we had one of those we interacted well enough where it's like I've known this guy for years. He's just this one friend that's he's this one good friend that aggravates you. And Reese just, hey man, just I think we should get out now. And so I'm like, I'm not getting up, dude. You can go cruise if you want to. So all of a sudden, Reese just found some reason to get me up. Hey Mike, there's bed bugs in here. He just did whatever he could to get me up. And I got up. Of course, there were no bed bugs in the room. But he's like, now that we're outside, I think we should go on field herping. So I'm like, you know what? I'm like, screw this. I'm never gonna hurt this dude again. He's aggravating. And so I mind you, it's cold. It was like in the 40s that morning. Um, he knew a spot over there. And he brought me there, and we're shining. It's at night. We're flipping stuff. It's cold. I'm kind of cranky, and I'm aggravated. But that changed very quick as we were shining this is a mattress, and I could see we could both see the cane break under the mattress just from shining it. Like the mattress was plastic, and you could see the cane break under that mattress from above, and it was a big one too. And I woke up instantly. That's all it took for me to wake up. And I remember, us lifting that mattress. Cane is kind of moving real slow because it's cold. Um, I mean, nice. I mean, a nice cane break. I'd never seen one in Louisiana. So of course, once you get excited and shit, time started moving real quick. Before we knew it, the sun was up. We had seen a few garter snakes. It started sprinkling on us, and we just didn't run out of shit to flip. We had been flipping the whole day. I mean, I got my Life of Texas rat snake, my Life of Max racers because they had mass racers over there. What did I mean, we flipped a good bit of stuff. And I
Yeah.
remember as it was coming to a close, there's a pile of shingles near because Louisiana, some parts of Louisiana is still torn by Hurricane Katrina, you know, and so there's still like debris in certain areas. I remember peeling these shingles on. It's like right at the edge of the road. Some of the shingles were on the road, like on the asphalt, and both of us was like just lifting these piles of shingles, and there's a baby cottonmouth on one side. And I remember both of us just lifting this other, bit of tiles and shingles, and I just seen, some speckling. And both of us immediately went to cursing. We hadn't even seen the whole snake. It was a nice speckled king snake. And we had forgot about the cottonmouth that quick that my ankle was right next to him. And so we're looking at this cottonmouth and this speckled king, and it was like, I mean, we kicked it off after that. We became friends. He still
Yes, yeah.
aggravate the hell out of me sometimes, but he's good. You gotta have those kind of friends. They keep you going.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Exactly, exactly. That's that's my snake hunting partner. That dude's a little puppy on caffeine, man.
Oh
And
yeah,
that guy keeps me motivated when I'm down, and you got to play the same role for your partner. Keep the ball rolling and keep it going. But that's
oh
excellent. It
yeah.
is so fun.
That was me. I mean, that ever since then. That's been our friendship. We've had that kind of friendship to where now, if he comes all the way over here, of course he'll try and blow me up. He'll blow my phone up, or he'll let me know beforehand. And we just have every now and then I run into people like him. I've met a few herpers, more than a few herpers at this point. And everybody's different. You have these different personalities, these different upbringings, and these different styles of herping. And it's just a never-ending good experience. The more people you actually get to meet, you actually end up learning a lot because these people come from different areas too. Herping might be different in one state, from compared to another. And people like him, they keep you going.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and the lessons that can be learned and how does it apply to what you're doing, especially someone like yourself that is so passionate about it. I know you're having those thoughts. So to be able to apply all those different aspects to it, how influential is that?
Oh, there, because I pretty much apply the same mental I have for field herb, and I apply that to real life. Don't you give up. Go against the grain. That's one of my favorite things. Go against the grain. Sometimes go against the usual. And I say that because you have all these things written down as far as snakes and reptiles, other reptiles, lizards, alligators, turtles. The behavior wise, and you might have this one guy, and I say it. Let me use it as an example. This one guy, hey, I only find this snake at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and the sun got to be right here, the clouds got to be right here, and then you'll be the guy that say, oh, well, I found it at 60. I found two of them at 65 degrees with a bunch of rain. And my key to that is, go against the grain, do the opposite, and you'll be surprised. You don't have to go with the flow all the time. You know, and that's
Yes. Yeah.
that's always been me. You don't have to go with the flow. Do what works for you. And I apply that to real life, whether I'm at work or just general life, whether I'm at a social gathering. Just be you, do what works for you, and you'll be surprised.
Yeah, for sure. It pays off. It pays off. I can definitely attest to that mindset to snake hunting. Well, excellent. Well, you know what, Mike? Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Is there anything else you want to hit before we call it for the night, or
I do want I do want to add another thing. It's always, I mean, that instilled in him is confidence. You know, when you have confidence, you have your heart in it. You know, you've already won half the battle right there, and that's pretty
Yes, sir.
much with anything. You have your confidence. If you, you know, maintain confidence, and you've already won half the battle. You know, regardless of what it is. And that's one thing I want to leave out with.
Yes, sir. That's definitely true. Keep a positive mindset and keep working, keep grinding. Oh yeah. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight, Mike. I appreciated getting to talk to you. I had a great time, and thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Excellent. We'll talk again soon in the future.
Gotcha.
Let me zoom out on you here. Okay, you got a message for the time capsule?
Yeah, and it's simply this. My prediction for you is that even though you'll forget all about this in some way consciously, next summer at about this time, you'll remember to return.